Hello and welcome to the Stitch Together podcast. The date is the Wednesday, the 4th of November 2015, and this is episode 24. My name is Chrissy, I'm your host. It's lovely to be back after a break a bit longer than I was expecting it to be. Unfortunately, I came down with a bit of a cold and it kind of laid me to waste. I've just kept my head down, not really even watched podcasts at all, just been spinning, a lot of spinning, which you'll see in Done and Dusted, listening to audiobooks and things like that. So yeah, I made a big mistake with my audiobook selection. There were 2 books in a series, big chunking epic fantasy books, which I love getting my teeth into. And the first one was like 45 hours long. The second one was like 47 hours long. And I'd just been listening to it back to back constantly for about 3 weeks, and then I finished the second one and thought, right, I want to start the third one. It doesn't come out till next year. It's like, that was really short-sighted of me. What I should have done is waited until the whole series was out and then listen to it, because I desperately want to know what's next. I think I told you what it was in one of the threads, so if you're interested, go and look in the last episode thread, because I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. It's a Brandon Sanderson one anyway. Yeah, it's really, really good books. But I'm very frustrated about the third book not being written yet. Anyway, really done very, very little in the last 3 weeks. Just, like I said, just keeping my head down, doing really simple stuff, which is why I've got a big pile of done and dusted stuff to get through in this podcast. I'm still a bit sniffly, but hopefully it won't be too annoying for you. But I didn't want to leave it any longer. It was just getting silly. And I was feeling well enough to do it. I just felt sniffly and didn't want to record when I'm being sniffly, because I don't like it. But if I waited, I might not record again until like March, because I tend to get colds right through the winter. And I think this is the start of cold season, sadly. Anyway, stuff and things. I have a giveaway prize to draw. I've already drawn it. I did it before I turned on the camera. But the prize was this lovely, lovely project bag from Luli. And it's beautifully, beautifully made with these lovely pockets. It's got nice sturdy cords to close it up. It's really, really beautifully made bag. Really like it, and I think the winner will love it. And yeah, I highly recommend her bags. Go and have a look on Etsy. And the winner of this, it was actually quite an interesting prompt. I quite enjoyed it. It was, what do you like about project bags? Because I think it's interesting, certainly for people who make project bags, to know what people want to buy. So this particular lovely, lovely project bag is the number that was drawn. It was number 3, and that happened to be Streepy, who is Cornelia, who lives in France. So Cornelia, give me a PM and let me have your full address, and I shall send this out to you in the post as soon as I can. So well done, Cornelia. And it's nice when a prize goes to someone who takes part in a lot of stuff and chats a lot in the group and things, which Cornelia does. So it's nice when I get to send stuff to people I feel like I know, because they've joined in so much on the board and stuff. It feels nice to me that people who are an active part of the community get some sort of reward for that. I don't suppose that's a particularly fair way of looking at it, because just because somebody doesn't join in on the boards doesn't mean they're not part of the community, because they might take part in chatting on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and or just enjoy reading the boards without actually commenting. So it is unfair of me. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't feel that way, but I do. You like to give nice things to people you know, don't you? Anyway, that's stuff and things. There isn't really very much in stuff and things this week, because we've got no knit-alongs going on or anything. I'm kind of right in the middle of starting to do all my gift crafting. I'm not sure how much I'll do this year, but I'm kind of hoping that I'll be able to do nearly all the gifts will be crafted. Apart from my other half, who doesn't like knitted things. Oh dear, bless him. I think he's worried that if I make him something, he won't wear it, and then he'll because he doesn't like it, or he'll wear it because he doesn't want to upset me and he'll hate it. So he's just opting out of the whole knitted gift thing. I should be grateful. It gives me more time to knit things for me. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. So I guess I'm sort of more active on the gift cal-ish thread on the Ravelry group, which was something I started earlier in the year, which was basically anyone who's talking about gift crafting and the things they've made or the things they're thinking of making or suggesting patterns and things like that. So if you're kind of in that frame of mind, that's a good place to come and chat. It's not a formal cal, it's not for prizes, it's nothing, it's just a chat thread about gift knitting and crocheting and felting and spinning and all the rest of it. So it would be nice to have you over there joining in and basically cheering each other on, sort of like keep the motivation going through the next few months. So yeah, that'd be nice. So done and dusted my big pile of stuff. Let's start with this. Is a pattern called Clincher, and it is by Ash Cairns, or Cairns, I'm not sure, Cairns I think, and it's a very clever design. Essentially, I should have practiced this before I put it on. Really should have done that. Essentially, it's, I guess, what do they call it when there's 2 rows of knit, 2 rows of purl? It's kind of like, is it double garter stitch or something? But it's a really, really interesting design. It's, gosh, that's warm. It's really warm. It's quite warm in here today. Basically, the pattern starts at this end and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you've got this big end, and at the end you make these loops, and then when you wear it you can just thread the ends into whichever loops you want to secure it and basically wear it in the way that you want. I really, really like it. I think it's very clever design. The yarn I used, I can't believe I just put it on after saying I was hot. Scatterbrained. You can tell I've not done any podcasting for a while. I've forgotten how to do it. The yarn I used was this beautiful grey with pops of turquoise, is from Perrin Yarns, and it was actually a custom dye. She did, I think it was Muddy Beach or something was the colourway she did, which was kind of this grey, greyish brown colour, and I asked her if she'd do the same one but with like pops of turquoise in it, just to give it a bit of extra oomph, and she did exactly what I wanted. Let me see if I can get, that's the colour there. And then I was so pleased, because in my sort of odds and ends of sock yarn that I use for, you know, various bits and pieces, usually sock yarn, blanket squares, there was this beautiful turquoise colour, and this is Vollmeister Pure Merino, and it was the perfect accent for the turquoise pops in the main yarn. I just couldn't believe it. It's a perfect match. So I'm really pleased with that, and it's much more neutral than a lot of my scarves, so it'll go with a lot more hats. I just wanted something that would, you know, go with more stuff, because a lot of my hats only go with a particular scarf. And this yarn base is beautiful. It's the MCN 4-ply, and it is so soft and squishy. And yeah, I highly recommend Perrin Yarns P-E-R-R-A-N, and there's a link in the show notes. So that's my first FO. And the next one are these fantastic socks. Look at the colours. Let me see if that's sort of accurate colours there. But I just love these. The yarn is Fab Funky Fibres, and this is the Mishmash colourway. And I was so surprised. I thought it was a completely random stripe. And then I realised, without even, let me see, I can line it up, without even trying, I really didn't try. I promise you I did not try at all. They're a perfect match. That never happens. So it wasn't a random stripe after all. So yeah, it's just my vanilla sock pattern, which I've told you numerous times before, where I do shaped toes because I have quite wide feet with quite long toes. So it's quite an unusual foot shape. And I've sort of written out the pattern so it basically fits my toes perfectly and doesn't squish them in like they sometimes can do. And fish lips kiss heel, and when I do the heel in striped yarn, what I always do is use the other end of the skein to do the heel. It gives you a couple of extra ends to weave in, but it leaves the front perfectly stripy without any interruptions. So that's why the heel always looks a bit weird. I do calf increases and then 2 inches of rib, and Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. That's it, to give you that nice stretch at the top. So I really like this yarn. It was lovely to knit. I really did enjoy knitting with it, and I think this will not be my last pair of Fab Funky Fibres socks because I really did enjoy the whole process of knitting with them. They zipped by. Really, really good fun knit. So that's another FO out the way. Next up we have a biggie. This is something I've been working on sort of pretty much consistently for several weeks, and it is the Cardinia Wrap by Amber, A-M-B-A-H, and it's fantastic pattern. It's using 3 skeins of yarn, and I think I mentioned in a previous episode that these 3 skeins are from 3 different indie dyers, and they're all the same base. They're definitely the same base. They came from the same mill, I'm sure of it. And it's 60% merino, 20% yak and 20% silk, and it's the most gorgeous yarn. And when I was knitting with it, it felt quite coarse on my hands when I was knitting. However, now it's blocked, it's so soft and it drapes beautifully, but it's not fuzzy. So I'm pretty sure it'll sort of stand up to quite a lot of hard wear, probably better than MCN will. Plus I think a lot of it's to do with it's got a really high twist to it, and I really like it. I actually ran out of yarn. I started on this end. I started with the recommended needle size, and I shouldn't have done that because I knit loosely. So I should have thought, oh, what I need to do is drop down needle size, which is what I normally do, but I thought I want to use up all of this lovely yarn. I'll do it in the required gauge and have a really lovely drape to it. So I did that, and then I ran out of this yarn, this green yarn. This is from the Wool Barn, and I got to about 2 rows from the end of the recommended section and ran out. So what I decided to do was I thought, well, I'll just leave it as is, but what I will do is I don't want to run out with this big grey section because it has a very definite pattern, and I don't want that to be cut short in any way because it'll be very obvious. So I dropped down a needle size for the mesh in the middle, and that is from Kettle Yarn Company, and that is the Black Quartz colourway, and I really love that colour. I think it'd make a fantastic sweater or something because it's just a really lovely dark neutral. And then this top one is from Truly Hooked, and so I did drop down a needle size for this and went back up a needle size for that, and again did it 2 rows short because I really don't think it messes with the symmetry at all. In fact, I think it looks better. I think if it was another 2 rows, it'd look a bit weird. And then for the end, I stayed up the same needle size as I did for when I cast on. So the whole thing is mirrored perfectly. And I don't think you can tell there's different needle sizes on the lace at all. And this thing is vast. So you start at the bottom with the mesh and you increase up to basically the end of the coloured section. You keep increasing to half the way through the mesh, then you start decreasing, and then you keep on decreasing all the way through to the end. And this thing is huge. It's massive. It goes on forever and ever and ever, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted a great big huge wrap because it just makes it easier for styling purposes, and you can just completely wrap yourself up in it and you can cuddle up in it. But because it's 4-ply and it's quite lightweight, you can really easily just wrap it round a couple of times in winter and just use it as a nice cozy scarf, because it is trapping lots and lots of heat because it's all scrunched up. And really pleased with how it came out. And I think this pattern uses the colours in a way that really works. It doesn't have to have stark contrasts to make it work, because it's just 3 different yarns that don't have to have definite sort of sections with light and dark like you do in stripes, for instance, because it's great big chunks of colour. It doesn't matter if there's dark, light, medium. But I'm absolutely delighted with how that came out, and I think it'll get a lot of wear in the coming months. And I think it probably worked quite well for a lightweight wrap in the summer as well. So love that. Really pleased with that. The next thing is something I started in March with the intention of it being a birthday gift in June. I thought I was getting plenty ahead, started with it. Nah, didn't. It's only just now been finished, so it's going to be a Christmas present rather than a birthday present. And that is my blanket for my niece, who had a baby blanket made for her when she was born, and sadly there was a washing accident whereby it got gathered up with all the bedclothes that needed washing and got done at 90 degrees. And my poor sister-in-law was absolutely mortified, and I said, it's okay, it's fine, you know, these things happen, you didn't do it maliciously. It's okay. But she was quite sad that her daughter didn't have a knitted blanket like her little brother did, and not how she used to, because she said, you know, my sister-in-law said she still had her baby blanket from when she was born, and she kind of wanted her daughter to have that same experience. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to make her another one, because I want her to have that same something to snuggle under that her brother has. And because I'm so far away, it feels nice to me that she's got something that I've made for her that she can wrap herself up in if she's feeling a bit sad or in need of love. Not that she very often feels that way, because she's quite a happy child. Anyway, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. I don't know, is it probably about 1.5 meters square? And the yarn I used is Rico Designs Baby Classic DK, and that is, I think it's 50% acrylic and 50% polyamide. And I used 4 different colours. There's mauve, dusky pink, powder, and anthracite is this dark grey. And I just crocheted stripes for a square, just basically just cast on the amount of stitches I thought would be good. Not cast on, did a chain about the size I wanted, because I wanted it to be big enough for when she was a bit old, you know, when she's probably a teenager or at college or something, for her to still be able to sort of snuggle under it on a sofa. And I think sitting under it here, yeah, that's plenty big enough to have it over your lap quilt. It's certainly big enough for me to sit under. And so I did the square, and then I made sure I started and finished with this sort of mauve colour, and then I did 2 rows of the mauve down the side, and then sort of started going all the way round in this anthracite colour. And then I found a crochet edging pattern from one of my stitch dictionaries. In fact, I shall show it to you because people have mentioned this before and they were asking. And this book is 1,000 Knitting Patterns book, and it's Japanese. Look at all these tabs. These are all things I like in this book that I want to make into patterns. And let me see. The one I did was 975, and it's very clear how it's illustrated. There's no written explanation, it's all graphically done, and the same is the case for all the knitting patterns. I mean, there's loads of colour work, there's lots of cables and lace and all sorts. And the way they do this in Japanese stitch dictionaries, and I've never read a Japanese pattern, but I just really like the stitch dictionaries, is the illustrations, you know, the little symbols in the charts are all illustrated graphically. So actually shows you, don't know if that's showing up very well, it shows you in graphic form how to perform that stitch that is that simple. So for instance, there's, you know, this is a cable one, and it's brilliant. You do not need to know Japanese at all in order to use these stitch dictionaries. And I got this from Etsy, from Japan, and I'll put a link in the show notes if you're interested, because I've seen it in the UK and it was stupidly expensive. And with books, you don't need to pay import duties in the UK. I don't know what it's like anywhere else, but in the UK you don't have to pay any import duties or customs charges on books that are imported. So all I had to do was pay for the book and the postage, which, to be honest, coming from Japan, was not that bad. I think the whole thing cost 40 quid including postage, and to be honest, I think it's worth every penny. It's a great, great book. So if you do any kind of design work, even if it's just changing up a stitch pattern, you know, in a basic, very basic, say child's sweater or something, and you want to do a cable up the side or a bit of lace to change things up for yourself, they're very good. Obviously, if you don't do it very often, you probably are more likely to get a well-known UK, US one, but I do a lot of that sort of tinkering around with things, so it was worth it for me. And I've got another one which is 351, which is a lot cheaper. But I'll put a link to the shop in my show notes. But I just think it's the edging is so pretty. I really, really like it. I think it just finishes it off really nicely, and I'm really delighted with the way it turned out. It doesn't really catch on stuff, but it's, I don't know, I just really, really like it. And because it's acrylic and polyamide, hopefully it won't die in a washing machine. It'll be a lot easier to look after. because, you know, I want it to be used. I want it to be, you know, part of my niece's life for as long as possible. And I like making things for my niece and nephew. They're always very appreciative. So next, I did a gift for somebody at Christmas, and I'm not going to show it because they sometimes watch. And I decided that I really liked the way it'd been done, the way it turned out, so I decided to make one for myself. And this is the look at my hair, it's gone crazy. Wide ribbed beanie from Woolly Wormhead. And that's a free pattern, I think. And I really, really like how it came out. I did an extra bit of slouch because I don't like wearing really tight hats. I much prefer them to be softer around my face and to sort of be able to pull down and frame it a bit. So I decided to do an extra 2 inches. I did the 22-inch size, and because I've got about a 21-inch head circumference, and then added 2 inches to the body of the hat before doing the decreases. And I had quite a lot of yarn left over. I think I had about 40 meters of the yarn left over, and I thought, well, what can I make out of that? Because I love this yarn. It's beautiful. It's Countess Blaze Lord of Silk Aran, and it's in a what was the colourway? Few are the children who turn out to become the equal of their fathers. That's the colourway, and I really love that name. It's from one of her Odyssey. I think it's an Odyssey one. One of her limited edition ones. She does the theme throughout the year based on a book. So I think it's the Odyssey one this came from. And I sort of looked at the yarn and thought, you know what, I'll just make a big ass pom-pom and stick it on the top. So that's what I did. I used one of those clover pom-pom makers, and I just think they're so easy to use, and they're so fluffy and full, the pom-poms that you make with those. And then I used a tip from, I think it was the Fat Squirrel. She was talking about pom-poms, and she suggested that, well, she actually said she didn't need to in this instance, the one she was doing, she didn't need to put a button on to anchor the pom-pom. I thought, that's genius. That's a really, really good idea. So I just dug out a button from my button jar and used it to secure the pom-pom. Just sort of sewed it, the bit that you tied through the pom-pom in order to anchor it, I made it with quite long ends, and then I sewed those through the pom-pom a couple of times, and then through the button a couple of times, and anchored it and just tied it off in a really very serious knot. So, and it's just really secured it nicely. It doesn't feel like it's dangling off, or it's not putting any strain on the top of the hat. I think it's a really good job. But it's a shame really, because it sort of hides decreases on the crown, which I really, really like. It's just a really, really nice crown decrease. But I really like the pom-pom. I just love big pom-poms. And it used up all the yarn, so I just think it's a really, really beautiful yarn. It's really gorgeous. So, of course, after really, really enjoying working with this yarn, I decided that I wanted another quick hit hat. And this time I used the Countess Blaze Lord of Silk DK. And this was a one-of-a-kind colourway. And it's lovely. I just really love this particular base, which I think is 85% Falklands Merino and 15% silk, and it's so soft, and the sheen on it is amazing. It's really hard to show you. There we go. It's a beautiful, beautiful yarn. And this hat is called, I think it's Anna. It's A-N-A. It's not Anna, it's Anna, I think. And I really like this hat. It's something I just saw and really, really like the idea of it. It's almost kind of cloche-like. It's cute. It's got these pleats at the back that hold it sort of like you would slouch it down. It's sort of permanently fixed that way. And you knit it flat with a provisional cast on one end, and then you knit pleats in the back, and then you gather those pleats, and it almost looks like an inverse turban. It's lovely. It just sits on the head really nicely. It won't sort of pull your hair out of place because of the nice silky base. And I'm just really pleased with it. So I've been on a bit of a hat marathon. Have I got any more hats to show you? No, now we're on to the marathon spinning section. So the first one to show you is a project I'm really, really proud of, and that is this one. I love this. This yarn is made from Yarn Geek Fibres BFL in the Iron Man 2 colourway, and it's worsted 2-ply, and I got a heavy lace weight, and the grand total of this yarn is 1,174 meters. Booyah! So pleased. That's definitely the biggest yarded meterage I've ever done. So what's that in yards? In yards, that's 1,284 yards, which is amazing yardage from 200 grams. Was it 200 grams? No, it was 227 grams, so it was like 8 ounces. But even so, I'm really, really pleased with how it's come out. Let me just open up one of these skeins to show you. It's really soft, and it's got a really nice drape to it. It's lovely. I'm really pleased with it. Basically, I just spun kind of end to end and in the 2 different braids, and then, yeah, that's the colour. So it's just random. It's all just randomed up. I mean, to be honest, the colour is much more, it's a semi-solid. You know, the braids were dyed as that. And why is it you find it really, really hard to do nice skeins when you're doing it live? Well, not even live. I can chop this out if I want, really, but I probably won't. So I've got to find something suitable for this amazing yardage of yarn. I'm just so pleased that it is really soft and smooth. I love BFL. It's such a nice material to use. And I shall say it's Blueface Leicester, because a lot of people struggle to pronounce it properly because Leicester is spelt weird. And I can tell you the correct pronunciation because I live there. It's Leicester. So there you go, for future reference, that's the name of the yarn. So following on from finishing that, I decided I wanted to do something fast and easy because that took me ages. So I dug out a braid from my stash and decided it was just going to be a quick 2-ply worsted and just do it really fast, sort of split it in half, do it, I think, yeah, I did it in half, and then the other half I split in 2 as well. So it was just to mix up the colours a bit. It's not like a true fractal, but it did break things up a bit. And this amazing, amazing yarn. I'm not saying my spinning's amazing, but the dye and the fibre was beautiful. It's from Sarah's Texture Crafts, and it was Final Frontier was the colourway, and it's on Polworth. And I just love how much, look at how much bounce there is in that. It's fantastic colourway. I really can't wait to knit with it, and I think it'll probably be either a cowl or a hat because it's a DK weight, I think. Where's my thing? Yeah, it's a DK weight, and I got 250 meters from 103 grams, which is pretty good yardage, really. Quite happy with that. And it's just very bouncy, really scrooshy and bouncy. So did that really quickly and decided that I was going to have my first spinning experience of pigeon roof. Studios, which I'd never spun any of their fibre before, and it was going to be a fibre I'd never spun before, which is Targi. I have to say, oh my god, it's gorgeous. I really, really love spinning with Targi. Really liked it, which is good because it's a sort of a fibre that you quite often see on Indie Dyer's stock list, and it's quite often one of the cheapest. So for me, quite often that means, you know, if I'm getting something from overseas, somewhere not in Europe, i.e. the US, which is where I buy most of my stuff from if it's not in Europe, Targi is quite often a fibre that's used, and the prices of fibre, if it's like a big dye or do lots of different blends, then quite often if it's got something like silk in it, or it's a bigger than average braid, it'll be sort of 16-17 pounds or US dollars equivalent, and I need it to be under the 15 pounds threshold for customs, so I always look for the cheaper version of the fibre. And Targi is usually under that 15 pounds because it's obviously cheaper fibre than something like merino silk. And I love how this came out. It's lovely. It's quite a dense fibre. It didn't have a huge amount of crimp. It felt quite solid. There wasn't a lot of air in it. But I love how it came out. I really love it. To me, it really sums up the way the braid looked before it was spun, because there was a lot of white in it and then a lot of these strong colours. And what I wanted to do was kind of preserve how that braid looks. I really loved the way it looked, so I decided to chain ply it. So that's what I did. I chain plied it. And the colours are fantastic. And I got a heavy worsted weight yarn, and I got 158 metres, which I think is not bad. So it's 124 grams. It's not as squishy as the Polworth, not quite as much bounce, and it's certainly denser, but I bet it's going to be warm. It's not as soft as the Polworth, it's not as soft as merino, but I think it's going to be a lot more hard wearing because there's really very little fuzz on it at all. Don't know if you can see. Very little fuzz, which is always a good sign. In fact, I know a couple of people have mentioned about finishing off yarns and thwacking, which is very satisfying, but I only do that now with things that I've spun woolen that I want to sort of fluff up. That's the only time I'll thwack. With worsted spun yarns that I want to have nice and smooth, I just leave it to soak, squeeze out all of the water, and put it in a salad spinner, and I spin that to get all the excess water out, and then I snap it, which is what it's called on Ravelry in the sort of what you've done to finish it. And that means I just get the fibre and I do that. I pop my hands and then I sort of move around a bit and do it again. And I work my way all the way round. And quite often what I'll do is then I'll turn the fibre round so my hands are putting pressure on the other half of the yarn, the other half of the skein, because when it's sort of, I don't know if you can see, but your natural tendency is kind of to do that. So that side, the outer side, is kind of where the pressure is put when you do that. So I thought I'd mention that because it had come up a couple of times with various people. I have more. I have this one, which is, I did this so quick. I started it on Friday and it was dry yesterday. I just did it so fast. It is Baby Long Legs BFL in the Berry Crush colourway, and isn't that a fabulous colour? It's amazing. I do love Baby Long Legs' sense of colour. She's like so on my wavelength. And let's see, there we go. I just did 2-ply, split it in half and did it opposite ends, so it staggered it up a bit. Sort of spun it in the different each half in a different direction, and really pleased with how it turned out. It's so soft. It was something I got in D-stash. I got a whole batch a while ago of baby long legs fibre, and it had been, because it'd been around for so long. I mean, the person I bought it off said she'd had it for 4 years, and I've had it for a good 6 months, nearly a year on top of that. So it sat around for quite a while, and it got a bit compacted. So I was really pleased how it actually came out in the end. It just made it slightly more work to prepare it, but it doesn't seem to have harmed the finished yarn. But it's so pretty. It's a heavy sport, and I got 218 meters, and it's 102 grams. And I'm really very pleased with it. I have no idea what I'm going to make with it. I think I'd make good mitts, actually, because BFL's sort of fairly robust, which means it won't pill, which is what mitts, there is a danger of that, because obviously it's not like a hat where it's on your head and it's not rubbing on anything. Whereas with mitts, it's on your hands, and you work with your hands and you pick things up, and it's quite easy to make it pill. So that is the last of my done and dusted. I told you I'd done nothing but spin. Spin and easy things, nothing complex at all, apart from that hat which has got all those pleats. That was more complicated. In fact, I have to say the pattern, the Anna pattern, which was by Pearl Grey, didn't have the clearest instructions on how to make the pleats. There was kind of a lot of guesswork involved and working it out from the photos, because her written description wasn't as clear as I would have liked it. But other than that, it's a great pattern. It's just that one section where you have to really think about it, and I think it could have been written better. So moving on to Nose to the Grindstone, I have a couple of projects that I've been working on since all that lot got finished. And the first one I have shown you before. It's a shawl using the centre panel is from my, let me actually see better back here because it's against the black. Refraction, which is my shawl, one of my shawl patterns, and I decided to do a centre panel with long wide wings, and the edge is my brain's just gone blank. I-cord edges, and the side wings are in garter stitch. The yarn is Dye for Yarn Superwash BFL sock in the Wooden Treasure Chest colourway, and I wanted to do this. I've got 2 skeins of it because it's a really good neutral. It'll go with pretty much all my clothing. Sort of nice, sort of mushroomy colour. I think it's a really nice colour, and I've kind of got to a point where I'm thinking, right, what do I want to do now with it? In fact, because, let me show you where I've got to. I've actually got most of the middle chart done. I'm kind of trying to decide whether to do another couple of repeats of the main chart in order to make these edges longer. And the other thought I had was maybe doing some short row sections to make it less wrapped round, and not also to give extra length in the sides, because at the moment it's very much sort of almost doubled up. So I think that's what I might do. So that's kind of a work in progress that I kind of have to think about, and once I've made the decision about what I'm going to do, then that bit doesn't need to be thought about. Just need to sort of follow my own guidelines. But it's come to a point where I need to make a decision about what to do next. So that's what I've got there. The other thing I have been working on is another pair of stripy socks, because I finished the Fab Funky Fibers one. And this was from my stash, and it's exactly the same vanilla sock pattern that I showed you earlier. And the yarn, let me just show you. This is the way I knit my socks, by the way. I do it on 2 circulars. So half's on the front and half's on the back. And I work, let me show you very briefly. What you do is you work on the back needle, and then when you've finished all along the back there, so you finish all along the back, then you drop that needle and pick up the other needle and work on that section of stitches. So you're constantly only working on one needle at a time, just working the front and the back. If you can see that, it's hard to explain. That's how I use 2 circs. And I find that the best way. I don't get ladders at all down the side, and I just find it quicker than doing magic loop. It's much simpler for me. I mean, I'll use magic loop, but I prefer 2 circulars. So I really like this yarn. I'd forgotten how much I like it because it's ages since I've knit with it, but I've got a couple of pairs of this yarn, which is Nicole C. Mendez, and it's Ringel Sockenwolle in the number 135 colourway. She doesn't do repeatable striping colourways, but I really love the way she does them. The fact is, the stripes are very semi-solid, and the yarn isn't the softest in the world when you're knitting with it, but once it's been washed a couple of times, they're my favourite socks. I will always reach for my Nicole C. Mendez socks before others because I just really like the way they feel on my feet. They sort of fluffed up and softened beautifully after a couple of wears, but there's been no wear on them at all. Even, you know, the ones I've been wearing quite a lot haven't got any wear on. So I've nearly finished this one, just got to do a bit more ribbing before I cast off, and then I can start the next sock. So I'm ploughing along with that quite nicely, and I've kind of ground to a halt with stuff on the knitting front, so I'm kind of thinking about what to do next. In the spinning front, I have, excuse me while I disappear and try and find the item I want to get. I'm doing some spinning, and let me see if I can get that close up. Don't know if you can see that. It's so hard to tell on my time. There we go. You can see that now. That's a plying ball, where you take the singles and you just grab the singles that you want to use together and wind it up like you would winding a ball of yarn, and then you just ply off it, and it's all neat and tidy, and it doesn't tangle up like it sometimes does if you ply directly off the spindles. Excuse me. So this was from some fondant fibre fuzzlings, and the colourway name was Gone West, and I think it's one of the ones that she quite often has in the shop. And Deb very kindly gave me this because she's really good at pushing my boundaries. I have certain colours that I go for, things like purples and teals and greens and sort of rusts and colours like that. And Deb is really good at giving me little gifts on things that I would never normally buy, but when I've spun it up, I'm really pleased with it and really like it. So she's very good at doing that, and that's what she did here again, and it's turned out really nicely, and I think it'll spin up, finish, the skein will be really nice. I think it will be. So yeah, it's going to be a 3-ply. So you can almost see how it's going to look even before it's got the twist in it. You can see. So that's where I've got to. I made the plying ball yesterday, so I might actually finish plying that today or tomorrow. But that's all I've got going on the spinning front at the moment, because like you can see, all that stuff got finished very recently. So that's it for Nose to the Grindstone, basically. What I wanted to talk about next was a blast from the past, and it all ties in to what's coming next. This is a shawl I basically made up as I went along, and I did that after I watched the Stephen West's Shawlscapes class on Ravelry, on Craftsy, and it was very good at sort of making you look at how you can change shapes of things, fabric, and I decided to give this a go. So it's very simple. You start off with a triangle in the middle, sort of doing your normal increases at the edge and down the centre spine. And then when I got to about here, I decided, well, I'd make another spine. So it's this shape, which is why I called it en haute. And I just did basic stripe in the body, and then when I ran out of that yarn, I changed over to this dark yarn and just did an edging. And I wear this shawl all the time. It is one of my favourite shawls. It just sits so nicely on your shoulders, and it wraps really nicely, and you don't really have to pin it. It just sits really well. So it's a really good size, it's a really good weight, it's so cozy and soft. I just wear it all the time. And the yarn is MCN, and they're different bases from 3 different dyers again. And the light grey is Grey Skies in Manchester, and it's the Count Cashmerino from Countess Ablaze. The turquoisey colour is Lush Twist Sock from Uncommon Thread in the, what's it called, Pontus colourway. And this sort of dark, deep purpley blue is a Posh Yarn Martha Sock in Dreams of an Insomniac, and that's a much softer base. It's not got such high twist as the other two do. And this shawl pills like you would not believe. I mean, I depilled it about 4 weeks ago, and already, I don't know if you can see, it's really hard to tell if it's showing up. Yeah, you can see the pills, I'm sure you can. And I depilled it just a few weeks ago, and it's already gathering pills again. And I don't care. I just love this shawl. Wear it a lot. It's soft, it's warm, it's cozy, it's great. So I decided that this is probably not going to last more than another couple of years, because it was done in 2013. So probably another 2-3 years of wear before it starts to get a bit holey because of the pilling problem. So I decided I want to make another one. So what I did was, recently there was a Posh Yarn update, and I fell in love with this skein. It's this amazing, that's the colour there, this wonderful forest green colour, and the yarn base is Pamela, and it's got these amazing sort of gold sparkle in it, and it's got quite a high twist to it, and it is 400 meters of 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon and 5% stellina. So it's a hard wearing yarn, and but it's really, really soft. It feels amazing. So after falling in love with that, I put it together with 2 existing colours that I have. So I want to make another one of those shawls in these 3 colours, and I can't decide how to split it up, whether to do those 2 together striping and this is the border, or those 2 striping and this is the border. Suggestions on a postcard, please. But I think they work brilliantly together. and the fact that they're the same base from the same dyer, despite being bought over probably over a couple of years, they just go brilliantly together. So I think that would be perfect replacement for that shawl, which I love and wear all the time. And these 3 skeins should be that much harder wearing, I think, hopefully. And I think it'll be really pretty with the little sparkles. I like it. I think it's a really good set of colours. I think it'll be very wearable. And when I bought that yarn from Posh Yarn, I also bought this amazing deep, deep, deep purpley blue, which is even deeper than that purpley blue, but it's in the same ballpark. And this is Kirsten Sock Sleep on My Wrongs, and that's a 100% superwash merino, and it's 450 meters from 100 grams, and it is incredibly soft. It is a very loose ply. It will probably pill like Billy-O, but I just love that colour. Really loved it. It's a very useful colour because I don't tend to buy dark coloured yarns, and then when I try and stripe things or use contrast, I haven't got that dark contrast to use. And I used that that sort of deep dark purpley blue in the Joker and the Thief shawl. In fact, have I got that there? I have. It's a very similar colour, and it's just it goes with everything. I think you can, because it's so dark, it doesn't clash with anything, even though it's a very bluey purple, almost a deep dark navy midnight colour. But I love it. I think it's gorgeous. So I don't know what that'll get used for, but I'm sure it will be a contrast yarn because it'll be a bit dark to show off like lace or cables or anything. And it's too soft to use for socks. It might work as a shawl on its own, like a little shawlette, because it'll probably make the lace pop. But I think it's more likely to be used as a contrast yarn. The other yarn that I bought in Splashed Out, because I have moved starting from Blast and Past right through plotting straight into Splashed Out. It's that whole seamless progression. Was something I picked up in town because I never go into town. It's really hard work for me. But my mum's cousin came to visit and we went out for lunch, and we popped into John Lewis, and I picked up a skein of Regia, and it's a snowflake. Let me see if I can show that picture so you can see it. Really, there we go. So kind of almost like a Fair Isle effect, and it's in a really nice neutrally bluey grey yarn. I mean, I find the Regia, though it's not the softest yarn in the world, it lasts, and once it's been washed a couple of times, it's actually a very similar feel to the base as the Nicole C. Mendez. It's a very similar yarn base, which doesn't surprise me because Nicole C. Mendez is in Germany, so maybe it comes from a similar supplier. But yeah, I just picked that up because I had to buy something when I went shopping with my auntie, because we always go shopping when we get together. And the last couple of years it's been shoes. I have enough shoes now, so I had to pick up a skein of Regia Snowflake in the 07709 Faber, which I believe is colourway, and that'll just be a really useful sock yarn for me to have. The main thing in my Splashed Out is this. It is a Spanish Peacock Tibetan spindle, and it is in boxwood. It's beautiful. Beautiful wood, absolutely stunning. And the shaft and the tip are Bolivian rosewood, and I love this thing. And it's 28 grams, and I think it's about 11 or 12 inches long. I can't tell you off the top of my head. but I bought it to go with this one, which was my first Spanish peacock spindle, and I love this spindle. I use it a lot, and it's almost identical in weight and length and balance to this one. Slightly shorter than the first one. Yeah, very, very slightly shorter, but they go really well together as a pair to spin with. So the idea being was I could spin 50 grams on one and 50 grams on the other, and then just ply them off the spindles into a plying ball without having to sort of wind off every 50 grams on the same spindle. I much prefer doing it. It doesn't interrupt me as much, providing it's a very similar spindle, and that's exactly what that is, and I love it. And I decided I wanted to get a lighter one to contrast with a darker one, because I had a dark one, but I really, really love it. They're both beautiful, really happy, and they're not cheap, but it's very rare that I see a nice Tibetan come in Spanish peacocks. They just get snapped up really quickly, because obviously the nice hardwoods are more expensive than, say, the birch ply that he uses quite often for the bead whorl spindles, which come up much more often. And it was just too good to resist because they come up so rarely. And this, by the way, is plastic tubing that I use to fit on the ends, because they're quite lethal spikes, and it just stops them being hazardous, people falling on them, and it also protects the tip because they're quite a fine tip. It's one of the things I like about them. They have a nice, very fine flicking tip. So having that protects that tip from getting knocked about. So that was my main splashed out over the last couple of months. It's quite expensive. So what I have to do right now is stop my alarm going off because I just noticed the time, and say I think that's it for splashed out. It is, but what I have for you is a giveaway which was very kindly donated by Emily, the Fibre Town podcast. She has recently brought out a pattern. Now, the pattern is the Estabel shawl pattern, and she has very kindly donated a copy of that pattern to give away to one of you guys. So let me see if I can do this without. It's a very pretty pattern. There's two sizes, and oops. I really should have messed around with the lighting before I did this. It starts off in a circular fashion from the middle, and then it has wings that go off to each side of the circle, and then laces applied to the bottom. It's really unusual. It's a very, very unusual shaped shawl. Really like it. That's a really good way of showing it off, actually, because it just sort of contours to the body, and it almost looks like a shrug, even though it's a shawl, when it's rested over the arms like that. And it's a really good way of showing off a variegated yarn and a contrast yarn. So the two sizes are fingering weight and sport weight, and obviously the gauges are different, and there's different stitch counts and things like that, so you get two versions. And I think where's the fingering weight version? Yeah, it's two skeins of yarn, either two of the same or one of each. Essentially it's two, and a sport weight version only uses two skeins as well. So it's a really lovely shawl pattern, which Emily very kindly wanted to share with you guys. I think it's really pretty. And the pattern was named after Emily's, I think it's her great-grandmother, yeah, her great-grandmother, who she says is a sassy, practical and compassionate woman who was always stylish. And I thought a really good prompt for this giveaway would be if you went over to the Ravelry thread that's linked in the show notes and look for the Esther Bell shawl giveaway, pattern giveaway thread. If you go in there and you let us know about a strong female role model from your childhood, that would be a really, really interesting set of stories to read, I think. Because she sounds like a lovely woman. Emily talked about her a bit in her episode before last, I think, when she released the pattern. And she obviously has a great deal of fondness for Esther Bell. So, and she's obviously retained all those warm feelings throughout her adult life as well. And I think there are various people in our lives that, even though we may have only known them when we were young and they no longer around for us in adulthood, they have such an impact on you as a child and your identity that impact lasts throughout adulthood as well. So I think it would be really nice to hear about some of those stories, and especially female role models, some strong, sassy women. It'd be interesting to hear about them. Also very gentle and kind and retiring women as well, but people who inspired you to become better people in your lives. So that'd be really interesting to hear those stories. And I will close the thread on the day that I record the next episode, I think, and recording on the 4th. So I'll do it again. The earliest it will close will be, I think, the 11th. I always get confused. I messed up the last one. Yes, if I record again on the 11th, which I probably won't, it'll probably be later than that. So the thread will close at the earliest on the 11th and possibly later. So you might be able to get in, on the 18th. It could be any time. You know what I'm like for recording schedules. In other words, I don't have one. So that's a really lovely pattern, and thank you, Emily, for your very kind donation, and I think lots of people will enjoy knitting that. So thank you for that. And on that note, I think I've come to the end of my show notes, and I have nothing else to show you in my pile to one side. So I shall say goodbye. Thank you for spending some time with me. It was lovely to have somebody out there listening, watching, and it'd be nice to hear what you think and chat with me in the Ravelry thread, the episode thread. It'd be really good to hear from you, and see you again soon. Bye.